Hello my friends! The video autofocus has always been a critical aspect of Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras, and in this video we will take a look at how good is the autofocus in video on Panasonic G9, and I would also like to share a couple of tips on how to use the video autofocus in Panasonic G9 to get the best possible results. According to the autofocus samples of other Panasonic cameras, the G9 seems to have the best video autofocus among Panasonic cameras right now. I have previously used Panasonic G85. I have also made a tutorial about how to use the G85's autofocus. I will leave a link to that in the description. And I can say that the autofocus of the G9 is a big improvement over the G85. The biggest difference for me is that the G9's autofocus is much more reliable and it hunts much less. Probably the most annoying thing that can happen with a contrast-based autofocus is that it starts refocusing without any reason at all. The G9 fortunately doesn't do that. Even when I was using face tracking to shoot my 10,000 subscribers special, which is basically just 5 minutes of me talking, the autofocus hasn't drifted from my face at all, not even once. The second type of situations where I'm very happy about the G9's autofocus are hands-on shots of different products. For example, in this shot of A6500, it works perfectly well in this kind of low light and also low contrast situation. So these kinds of situations where the autofocus doesn't have to do big adjustments, I personally trust the G9 to do the job, and so far it has been very reliable in these kinds of situations. It is still a good idea to tell the camera where you want it to focus by choosing the right focus area mode. The good thing is that the differences between the focus area modes are much smaller than it used to be on the other Panasonic cameras, where you could spend hours figuring out which area works the best in specific situation. I use the one area and custom multi and the face tracking most often. For easy situations like shooting a landscape, I also use 225 area. There is also no autofocus speed adjustments for the video in the G9, those only work for stills, and honestly that is a good thing in my opinion, because all I need is one mode that works well. The weakest point of the G9's autofocus is still focusing from very far distance to close distance. Having said that, it is usable in these kinds of situations. The samples that you can see here are shot at 40mm, which makes the situation more difficult, and here I'm basically trying to trick the camera. This is not a typical real-life situation, but it works fairly well in my opinion. If you need very fast autofocus in these situations, you can simply half press the shutter button or AF on button if you set it up, and it will focus very fast that way. As you can also see, the depth of defocus technology also makes a very good job of preventing the camera to hunt too much, which makes the autofocus look much more natural. A big surprise for me is the tracking, that works really well. It can follow the subject across the frame and adjust the autofocus fairly precisely, as you can see in this sample, so I am very happy about the autofocus performance in these situations. With a flip-out screen, 4K 60p video capabilities, insane in-body image stabilization and so on, the G9 is one of the best candidates for the best vlogging camera on the market. So is the autofocus good enough for that? I would say that it is. You can trick it in some extreme situations, but for usual or reasonable tasks like face tracking or focusing from medium distance to close distance, it works well enough in my opinion. It is still not as good as Sony's hybrid autofocus system or Canon's dual pixel, but those have other drawbacks, so if the rest of G9's package is suitable for you, the video autofocus doesn't necessarily have to be a deal breaker in my opinion. Regarding the tips on how to use the autofocus, the basic principles from my Panasonic G85 tutorial still apply here, but the G9 will just perform better. So there are basically two factors that will determine how well will the autofocus work. The first one are the settings. As I have said, there are no speed or sensitivity settings available for the video, so we basically just have to choose the focus area. For the most precise autofocus, the one area works probably the best, but the custom multi works basically as good as the one area. Face tracking also works well, and so does the regular tracking. Regarding the 225 area, it is suitable for easy situations, but for more difficult tasks like focusing on small subjects with shallow depth of field, the 1 area will work much better. Thanks to the great handling of the G9, changing focus area is extremely fast. You just need to press the button, rotate the dial, and that's it. Also, half pressing the button makes the autofocus very fast, so if you are behind the camera, half pressing the button fixes most of the issues with the autofocus. The second factor which determines how well the autofocus performs is the specific situation. In low light situations, the autofocus gets a bit slower, but I would say that it is still good, and it only becomes very slow at the situations with very low light. Shallow depth of field also makes the autofocusing more difficult for the camera, and the last thing that used to upset the Panasonic autofocus is the busy background, but the G9 is much better and more reliable in these situations. Regarding the lenses, if you use ultra-wide lens like Panasonic 7 to 14mm f4, the G9 has a really easy job because in that case, almost everything is in focus all the time. So the important thing here is that it will not start refocusing without a reason. Autofocus with Leica 12 to 60mm f2.8 to 4 is also very good. The fastest autofocus in stills that the Panasonic claims to be 400 of a second with the G9 is also achieved with this lens, so it shouldn't be a limiting factor. The 12 to 60mm kit lens also works well. To sum up, the G9's autofocus is significantly improved over the previous Panasonic cameras, although it is still definitely not perfect. In usual situations, it works well enough to be used for run and gun situations, vlogging, and so on. It can still be tricked though. Probably the biggest weakness of G9's autofocus is focusing from long distance to very short distance. To achieve the best possible results, it is also necessary to use the right area settings. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.